And since the passage of that law in Parkland, where now people in Florida, if you threaten to shoot up a high school, you can have that firearm temporarily removed. You're given a right to due process and counsel. That law has been used 19,000 times since Parkland to disarm people that are risking themselves and others, including one time for my own mother, where somebody threatened to kill my mother, an NRA supporter, that said a death threat to my mom that said, F with the NRA and you'll be DOA. And we used the law that we passed after Parkland to disarm the man that threatened to kill my mother. And from conversations like that, that's why I wanted to go to college, was because I ended up having that conversation with that guy. And previously, this man that was protesting me, by the end of our conversation, ended up crying because he realized the kids that he was protesting weren't plants of the FBI or something like that. We really were just young adults that didn't want our friends to die anymore, that were simply practicing our First Amendment rights, that were having armed intimidation go against our First Amendment rights to make our voices heard there. And from that conversation, I realized the driver of so much hatred is just people assuming what other people intend or being told what those other people intend. And education is the answer to so much of that. And that's why I wanted to go to college. And that's what I wrote my college essay on. I titled it, How to Talk to People That Want to Kill You.
What role do you think universities play in ensuring that there's opportunities to reach out to the other side, that there's opportunities for students to use their voice and speak freely? What place do you think universities have in crafting that aspect of being a good citizen?
I think that the kind of negative space left by schools that abdicated the responsibility of fostering a healthy free speech culture and a student body that's interested in civil dialogue within the bounds of the First Amendment or their school's respective policies was really brought into focus this past year by the reaction to the Israel-Palestine conflict and schools absolutely melting down for a variety of reasons. One, I think there's a large-scale kind of cognitive distortion in our generation of good versus evil and just refusal, whether it's in American politics, international politics, to even see anything other than a black and white binary. And I think that our domestic politics really, especially growing up for me, the first election I really remember with any sophistication was 2016, where it felt like a lot of the adults around me, the media around me, my friends, there's just no middle ground. It's black and white. You're a good person or a bad person, and this is my team. I think that got transposed also into the way that our generation consumed, and combined on top of that social media and the feedback loop, but how we internalized a very real and very serious international conflict, and it became a campus kind of issue in a way that I don't think that it needed to be so vitriolic and so divisive if these schools actually had done their duty of bringing kids from diverse backgrounds who are going to disagree on whatever the next conflict is, whatever the next divisive election is, whatever any cultural issue that comes into focus in the 4 years that they're there. Schools need to bring kids in to teach them what their First Amendment rights are, to teach them what the boundaries are, to teach them why they're there and why it's important to have epistemic humility and desire to reach across the aisle or desire to understand the other side. And now all of a sudden you have schools like the school that I'm taking classes at now. I'm a part-time student at Columbia. Columbia did absolutely nothing when I showed up on campus to, in my opinion, to foster free speech besides have rules in the books from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that have never really had any new life breathed into them or have never really been foisted in front of students. Now all of a sudden Columbia is having dialogue across differences, and there's a free speech component to orientation, and students are taught how to protest within the boundaries of their rights and what the First Amendment means and what the rules are on the books, and actually reading the student handbook when they arrive on campus. And schools have always had the responsibility of creating an environment in which people can disagree and express their First Amendment rights and their free speech rights up to the line of actual incitement of violence. I think that has always been the duty of a university, and this past year I think has really brought into focus why that is so critical, and it's not a clear right-left issue. I think the Israel-Palestine conflict was really the sort of thing, sadly, that I don't mean this to be flippant at all, but a sad and disturbing silver lining is that some of these universities are realizing oh, we actually have failed to create an environment where we can yield progress or move forward without totally shutting down.